There are many movies, books, documentaries, and TV shows based on real events. One example is the famous TV series American Horror Story. Most of the characters in the show are inspired by real people and events. Now, here are 4 people and a place that inspired the show, all with dark and creepy histories. And as always, if you dare to hear the real story, let's jump into the video.
This is an emergency alert. Severe weather warning is in effect.
Twisty the Clown is one of the scariest characters in American Horror Story. His creepy mask and violent behavior make him everyone's worst nightmare, and the fact that he's a clown makes him even scarier. In fact, the largest clown organization in the US even complained that the show is making people's fear of clowns, which is already common, worse. Twisty is actually based on a real person, John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown. Gacy was a serial killer in the 1970s. It's said, though not confirmed, that he sometimes dressed as his clown character, Pogo the Clown, while committing his crimes. Gacy performed as Pogo at parties and events to make extra money. Gacy's crimes were horrific. He targeted young men, mostly prostitutes or runaways, promising them jobs, then taking them to his home. There, he would abuse, kill, and sometimes torture them. Some victims were chloroformed, raped, and strangled, while others were killed in brutal ways using their own underwear. His killing spree ended in 1978 after the disappearance of a 15-year-old boy. When police searched his home in Des Plaines, Illinois, they found the bodies of 26 victims buried under his house. Gacy later confessed, admitting he had lost count of how many he had killed. Police also found 3 more bodies on his property and learned that he had thrown 4 victims into a nearby river. Gacy was convicted of 33 murders, though there are believed to be even more victims. He was sentenced to death in 1980, and after 14 years on death row, he was executed by lethal injection in 1994. During his time in prison, he showed no remorse and even created artwork, most of it featuring skulls and Disney characters. After his death, some of his artwork, including a self-portrait of him as a clown titled "Goodbye, Pogo the Clown," was sold. Kathy Bates played Madame Dalphine LaLaurie, a cruel mother and slave owner in American Horror Story. The character shows no remorse for the terrible way she treats her slaves. But how accurate is this portrayal? Was the real Dalphine LaLaurie really that cruel? Dalphine was born in 1775 and grew up in a time when slavery was accepted and extreme punishment was common. By the time she married a French doctor, Louis LaLaurie, she owned at least 54 slaves. She kept them chained up and gave them barely enough food to survive, despite concerns from her friends and family about her brutal treatment of them. She continued to mistreat her slaves, even beating her children if they tried to help the slaves. Then, in April 1834, a fire broke out at the LaLaurie home. The fire started in the kitchen, just below the slave quarters, and neighbors worried that the slaves might be trapped and burned. When Dalphine refused to give them the keys to the slave quarters, the door was broken down. Inside, the neighbors found the terrible conditions the slaves were living in. They were chained up tightly, and their bodies were covered in scars and open wounds. 7 men were found badly mutilated, hanging by their necks with their limbs stretched and torn. One man had a huge hole in his head filled with worms. It's said that the fire was started on purpose by a 70-year-old cook who was found chained to the stove by her ankle. She said she started the fire as a way to commit suicide because she feared being punished in one of the upper rooms. She also claimed that any slave who went into that room was never seen again. After the discovery, the LaLaurie house was attacked by angry locals. Dalphine fled and is thought to have lived the rest of her life in Paris, where she died and was buried in the 1840s. Her grave was later moved to St. Louis Cemetery in New Orleans. Although there is no official record of her grave, in the 1930s, A man found an old copper plaque in the cemetery with her name and the date of her death, December 7, 1842, listed as Paris. Jimmy Darling was a main character in the 4th season of Freak Show. He is the illegitimate son of the bearded lady and the strong man. Jimmy has a condition called ectrodactyly, which causes his hands to be claw-like with missing fingers. This earned him the stage name Lobster Boy. His deformities were exploited his entire life, even his birth being turned into a paid stage show. He is forced to perform in the Freak Show, dreaming of a normal life. However, when some performers are in danger, Jimmy kills a policeman by slitting his throat. His life falls apart when he's wrongly accused of being a mass murderer. In a cruel twist, the lawyer trying to prove his innocence cuts off Jimmy's hands and sells them to a museum. It's believed that Jimmy's character was based on Grady Stiles Jr., a real-life man born in 1937 with the same condition, who also performed as Lobster Boy in freak shows. Grady's deformities were more extreme, with his fingers and feet fused together to form claws. He came from a family with the same condition, and they traveled the country performing circus acts, earning a good living. Though Grady married and had 4 children, 2 of whom also had the condition, he, like Jimmy, dreamed of a normal life. Unhappy with his situation, he became abusive and turned into a chronic alcoholic. Despite being unable to walk because of his deformity, Grady had developed incredible upper body strength. His violent temper, combined with his strength and alcoholism, made him dangerous. Things became more violent when his eldest daughter got engaged to a man Grady didn't like. He killed the man with a shotgun the night before the wedding. Due to his disability, Grady wasn't jailed, and instead, he was given 15 years of probation. For a brief period, he stopped drinking and remarried his first wife, but he eventually returned to alcoholism and abuse. In 1992, Grady's wife had had enough. She paid a 17-year-old $1,500 to kill him. Grady was shot and killed in his home by the hitman. In her defense, his wife said it was the only way to escape his abuse. If you are familiar with American Horror Story, you may recognize a small statue in the opening credits of Freak Show that resembles Grady. A picture of him can also briefly be seen in the American Morbidity Museum in Episode 3. The Axeman was a jazz musician who played the saxophone in clubs throughout New Orleans. He appeared in Season 3 of American Horror Story as a serial killer who used an axe as his weapon. The Axeman was killed in 1919 by a coven of witches to stop his killing spree. But in the show, he is brought back through an Ouija board. The character is based on a real serial killer known as the Axeman of New Orleans, who went on a terrifying killing spree from May 1918 to October 1919. The Axeman would break into his victims' homes, usually through the back door, and brutally kill them with an axe. One time, he even used a straight razor to slit a victim's throat. In total, 8 murders were officially attributed to him, though there may have been more. Most of the victims were Italian, and the killings caused widespread panic. People were so scared that they stayed inside at night, constantly fearing the Axeman would strike. On Friday, March 14, 1919, the community was shaken again when a strange letter, allegedly written by the killer, was sent to the editor of the New Orleans Times. The letter stated that the Axeman would kill again at 15 minutes past midnight on March 19th, but would spare anyone who played jazz music in their home. That night, the clubs and bars of New Orleans were packed, with jazz music playing all night long. However, since some people didn't play jazz, the police thought the letter might have been a hoax because no one was killed that night. The Axeman was never caught by the police, and his crime spree ended as mysteriously as it began. In 1920, a man named Joseph Mumphrey, who had been connected to the murders, was reportedly killed by the widow of one of the Axeman's victims. After that, the killings stopped. The full story of the Axeman of New Orleans is complex and could likely fill a documentary, but that's the real story behind the Axeman in American Horror Story. The 5th season of American Horror Story is set in the fictional Hotel Cortez in Los Angeles, a place full of strange and terrifying events. The hotel is haunted by demons, ghosts, and curses, and its inspiration comes from old horror films, especially the notorious Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, which opened in 1925. The Cecil Hotel is most famous for the mysterious death of Elisa Lam, whose body was found in one of the hotel's rooftop water tanks. However, the hotel's history is filled with disturbing events, including murders and suicides, which inspired the American Horror Story season. One of the most infamous residents was American serial killer Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, who stayed at the Cecil in the 1980s while committing 13 murders. He would often return to his $14 a night room on the top floor after killing, dumping his bloody clothes in the hotel's dumpster. Another serial killer, Jack Unterweger, stayed at the hotel in 1991 for 5 weeks and murdered 3 prostitutes by strangling them with their bra straps. In 1964, Goldie Osgood, also known as the Pigeon Woman because of her love for feeding birds, was found raped, stabbed, and strangled in her room at the Cecil. Her murder remains unsolved. The hotel has also been linked to suicides, such as the tragic death of Pauline Otten in 1962, who jumped from the 9th floor, landing on and killing a passing pedestrian. The Cecil has a reputation as a hotspot for ghost hunters, with Ouija boards and demonic rituals frequently practiced there. In an effort to move past its dark history, the hotel rebranded itself as Stay on Main, but it remains a popular, eerie tourist attraction. With the release of American Horror Story, many fans now request to book the room where Elisa Lam stayed before her mysterious death. That's the story behind the hotel and some of the people who inspired the show American Horror Story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and let me know what topic you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.